She tears her own head from her body, dragging her glistening viscera into the night. Not just a story, but a rule book for survival in Southeast Asia's most remote villages. Across Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines, nightly terror isn't folklore. It shapes who can hang their laundry, who smells of vinegar, and who listens for the faintest sound above the roof. The Viscera Files uncovers how these chilling beliefs grip entire communities, turning ordinary homes into traps of suspicion and fear. But why do these rituals and suspicions still rule the darkness? Tonight we step into the world where fear rewrites the rules of everyday life. In the heart of rural Thailand, the day's work begins and ends with ritual precision. As the sun reaches its lowest point, there is a quiet urgency in the air. Women move quickly along the narrow paths between stilted houses, gathering laundry from bamboo lines before the last light fades. In these villages, leaving clothes to dry overnight is not a careless mistake. It is an invitation to disaster. The belief is simple but absolute. If clean laundry is left outside after dark, it ceases to be clean. The Krasue, cursed to roam the night in search of filth and blood, is said to wipe her mouth on whatever she finds hanging unattended. A white shirt, a child's school uniform, even the family's only bedsheet, if any are left out, they may return in the morning with strange, reddish stains. In the logic of the village, these marks are not just dirt. They are a warning that something unclean has passed through, that the boundary between safe and dangerous has been breached. This rule is not written, but it is enforced with the weight of generations. An elder recalls, in a voice worn by years of early mornings, how her mother would wake her before dawn to finish the washing. It was better to lose a little sleep than to risk the shame of stained laundry. In a culture that prizes outward cleanliness and composure, a mark left by the Krasue is more than an inconvenience. It is a public exposure, a sign that someone in the household has failed to protect the family's good name. The laundry curfew is more than superstition. It reorganizes the rhythms of daily life. It burdens women who must time their chores to the movement of the sun and the invisible threat that comes with nightfall. In these villages, fear is not just a feeling. It is a set of rules, woven into every act of care and every piece of cloth brought in from the line. In the Malaysian kampung, the threat does not linger at the edge of the fields or in the distant jungle. It seeps into the home, into the places where new life is meant to be safest. Here, the Penanggalan is not just a story told to frighten children. She is a presence that stains the air, a suspicion that settles on the shoulders of those trusted most, the midwives. Generations have relied on these women to guide mothers through the dangers of birth. But trust is a fragile thing. When an infant fails to thrive or a mother does not recover, the line between healer and predator blurs. The Penanggalan is said to slip from her body at night, organs trailing behind her swollen with stolen blood. Before she can return to her human form, she must shrink her viscera to fit back through the narrow neck. The only way is to soak them in strong vinegar. The ritual is as ordinary as it is grotesque. A basin, a bottle of vinegar, the hush of pre-dawn. The scent lingers in the house, sharp and unmistakable. In these villages, the smell of vinegar is not just a sign of pickling or cleaning. It is a warning, a sensory alarm that something unnatural may be living next door. A kampung midwife, hands calloused from years of work, becomes the focus of whispers if the tang of vinegar clings to her clothes or drifts from her kitchen. Neighbors watch who buys vinegar in bulk, who scrubs her floors after dark. The ordinary becomes evidence. Even the smallest detail, a faint sourness on the breeze, can breed distrust. In the close quarters of the kampung, fear is not loud. It is quiet, persistent, and it soaks into the walls with every drop of vinegar poured. For the women who carry this suspicion, daily life becomes a balancing act. Every gesture is measured. Every purchase is watched. The home, meant to be a place of comfort, becomes a site of scrutiny. The Penanggalan legend transforms the most mundane acts into rituals of suspicion, turning the scent of vinegar into the mark of a monster. In the Visayan barrios of the Philippines, the rules of night are written in sound. The Manananggal does not stalk the daylight, nor does she leave stains or scents behind. Her approach is felt in the pressure of silence, in the way the jungle's chorus falters when darkness thickens. For generations, villagers have listened for a single rhythmic call, a sharp repeating tick-tick that cuts through the humid night. Some say it comes from a bird, others from an insect, but everyone agrees on what it means. The tick-tick is a warning, but it is not a simple one. A barrio elder, voice hushed, explains the paradox. The louder the sound, the farther away the danger. A clear, echoing tick-tick means the Manananggal is still moving through the distant trees, not yet close enough to strike. But when the call grows faint, barely more than a whisper on the wind, or when the jungle falls completely silent, that is when fear takes hold. In the logic of the legend, a faint tick-tick means the monster is directly overhead, wings folded against the thatch, tongue ready to slip through the smallest gap in the roof. The silence is not safety. It is the moment before the attack. The effect is psychological. In the dense, tangled dark, sound travels strangely. The jungle can muffle and distort, making it impossible to tell if a threat is approaching or already inside the circle of light. Parents teach children to listen, to stay awake if the tick-tick fades, to trust their instincts when the world goes quiet. This rule is not just a story, it is a nightly ritual, a way of surviving in a place where the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural are drawn by sound. In these villages, fear is measured in decibels, and safety is never louder than a bird's call in the night. In Southeast Asia, the names of night creatures reveal a hidden network of shared ideas. In the Visayan regions of the Philippines, the word Manananggal comes from Tanggal, which means to detach or to remove. Detach is at the heart of the name. Malay has Penanggalan, built from the same root. It uses a prefix and a suffix to mark the act, and the name means the one who detaches. Detaches is the concept carried in the word. Linguists trace this root through the Austronesian language family, finding it in Tagalog, Cebuano, and across the Malay archipelago. Austronesian connections are visible in the words people use. The meaning is clear. A being defined by separation, by the act of breaking away from its human form. A folklorist paging through dictionaries and oral histories sees the same pattern. Detachment is not just a metaphor, it is the core of the horror encoded in the very name. Detachment is literal and verbal. In both the Philippines and Malaysia, the language insists on the moment of transformation, the woman who splits herself in two, the head that tears itself free, the body left behind. This is not a monster that merely visits or possesses. She is a monster because she comes apart. The vocabulary itself is evidence, a fossil record of an idea moving from mouth to mouth, island to island, long before borders existed. Yet the pattern is not universal. In Thailand, the creature is called Krasue. Its origins are debated. Some scholars look to Old Khmer, others to a local substrate, but it does not share the Tanggal lineage. Krasue stands apart in name. Instead, Krasue is linked to Lao Kasu and Khmer AHP, forming a separate lexical family. The image is almost identical. A woman's head flying with trailing organs, hungry for blood and filth. But the word itself is an outsider to the Austronesian cluster. This divergence hints at a deeper story, one where ideas migrate but names do not always follow. The web of cognates and divergences is more than academic curiosity. It maps how myths travel, mutate, and take root in new soil. The shared Tanggal route across the Philippines and Malaysia points to a common heritage, likely spread through ancient maritime trade and kinship. The distinct Thai terminology suggests parallel evolution, or perhaps a borrowing of imagery without the language to match. Where the word for the monster means to detach, the story is always about separation of body from body, of the familiar from the monstrous. Language itself becomes proof that, long before borders, the nightmare of the flying head crossed the water. Ideas, like goods, rarely travel alone. For centuries, the waters between the Malay Peninsula, Sumatra, Borneo, and the Philippine archipelago formed one of the world's busiest maritime corridors. Ships from Srivijaya and later Majapahit carved out routes that carried not just spices, ceramics, and textiles, but also stories. Tales slipped between languages and faiths as easily as silk through a merchant's hands. In the shadow of these great empires, port cities became crossroads. Buddhist monks from Palembang recited sutras in the same markets where Malay sailors traded with Javanese and Tagalog-speaking crews. Later, Islamic traders brought Quranic verses and new taboos, while Spanish friars in Manila mapped out a Catholic world atop older beliefs. Each religious wave layered new meanings onto old fears, reinterpreting spirits and curses in the language of karma, sin, or ritual impurity. The flying head, already ancient, was recast with each arrival, sometimes a sinner condemned by Buddhist law, sometimes a witch punished under Islamic or Christian doctrine. The Austronesian root Tanggal, meaning to detach, rode these same currents. Linguists trace its journey from Malay Penanggalan to Filipino Manananggal, always carrying the image of separation. Yet the Thai Krasue, with its distinct name, hints at a parallel path that may have traveled by land, through Khmer or Lao, before merging with the maritime cluster. The convergence is seen not just in language, but in the near-identical nightmares that haunt rice paddies from Sumatra to the Mekong Delta. The movement of these stories was never abstract. They arrived with people, midwives, healers, and traders who brought their fears and remedies into new villages. A tale whispered on a dockside in Malacca might surface years later as a curfew in a Thai village or a warning to new mothers in a Visayan barrio. As faiths shifted, so did the rituals. Buddhist monks prescribed chanting and merit-making. Islamic teachers called for vinegar and prayer. Catholic priests wielded holy water and the sign of the cross. Each doctrine claimed to protect against the same horror, but the monster survived, adapting to every new regime. Trade routes mapped the geography of goods, but the true currency was belief. The legend of the flying head moved with the tides, changing shape but never losing its power. In every port, every village, it became a tool, a way to explain what could not be controlled, a weapon to enforce the boundaries of the community. The story's journey is written not just in old chronicles, but in the daily rules and rituals that still shape life on the edge of the sea. A name whispered in the dark can be as dangerous as any monster. In villages across Southeast Asia, suspicion rarely falls at random. It lands on the woman who lives alone at the edge of the rice fields, the widow who refuses to remarry, the midwife whose knowledge of birth and blood sets her apart. These are the ones most often accused of harboring the curse, of being the Krasue, the Penanggalan, the Manananggal. The pattern is old, but it is not accidental. In the Philippines, Spanish missionaries wrote of the Babaylan, respected healers and spiritual leaders who became targets as colonial rule took hold. Their rituals, once essential to village life, were recast as devil's work. The label shifted from Babaylan to Aswang, from protector to monster. A woman who had guided mothers through childbirth could be accused of eating the unborn. The accusation alone could ruin her, cutting her off from the community, making her a living ghost. In Malaysia, the Penanggalan legend tightens around the figure of the midwife. When an infant dies or a mother does not recover, the blame does not always fall on fate. Neighbors watch for signs: vinegar stains, strange hours, a woman seen near the house of the bereaved. A midwife who attracts too much attention, who is too skilled or too solitary, risks becoming the focus of a quiet campaign. Clients disappear, doors close, stories spread. She may be forced to leave, taking her knowledge with her. In Thailand, the Krasue is most often a woman on the margins. A widow, a childless wife, a newcomer. The curse is said to strike those who transgress, who break the rules of marriage, of sexuality, of kinship. But in practice, it is often used to explain misfortune that has no other answer. A family's bad luck, a string of livestock deaths, a baby who fails to thrive. The monster becomes a mirror for the village's fear, and the accused pays the price. These are not just stories of supernatural terror. They are stories of exile, of women driven from their homes by rumor and suspicion. The legend gives shape to the community's anxieties, but it also gives them a target. The real cost is not measured in blood, but in the slow erasure of those who do not fit. In every village, the monster's shadow falls longest on the outsider, the outspoken, the woman who stands alone. Night falls heavy over Surin province. In 2016, a string of strange lights flickered above the rice fields, green, red, sometimes pulsing as if alive. Word spread quickly. The elders said it was the Krasue, hungry and hunting. Within hours, the village changed its shape. Men who had spent their lives tending crops now formed patrols, gripping flashlights and machetes, their faces set against the dark. The patrol leader, a farmer named Somchai, recalls the fear that swept through his neighbors. Each night they gathered at the edge of the fields, scanning for a floating head or the telltale glow. Children were kept inside, windows were latched tight. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and wet earth. Dogs barked at every shadow. There was no room for doubt. Every unexplained light became a threat. Every movement in the grass, a possible attack. Somchai describes the rhythm of these nights, the slow sweep of beams across flooded paddies, the nervous laughter that died quickly, the silence that settled when a light appeared. Some villagers claimed to see a woman's face, teeth bared, organs trailing behind her as she drifted above the water. Others said it was just a trick of the mist, but no one was willing to take chances. When the police arrived, they found a community on edge. Officers traced the lights to reflections, possibly headlights from a distant road bouncing off wet ground. A university expert reviewed the footage and dismissed the idea of computer-generated imagery, but the explanation did little to calm the mood. For the patrol, the science was irrelevant. The fear was real, and so were the patrols. Somchai's voice carries the weight of those nights. He remembers the exhaustion, the way his hands shook after hours of holding the machete. He remembers the relief at dawn, when the fields returned to green and gold, and the only thing left behind was the memory of a night spent guarding the village against a monster that no one could see, but everyone believed was out there. In these moments, the boundary between legend and reality is as thin as the mist over the paddies. These legends aren't fading. They still spark real-life village patrols and shape who gets trusted or accused today. As modernity creeps closer, the monsters adapt, slipping between folklore and rumor, between suspicion and fear. The line between myth and reality blurs wherever isolation, anxiety, and difference survive. In every darkness, we decide whose shadow becomes the monster. Share your thoughts below. What do you see in these stories?